What's up, family? How are you? Today, Tuesday, April 28th, we are closing in on the end of April. Quarantine has actually gone through a whole month, or another calendar month. Very kind of crazy, right? The beaches are starting to open up, certain public areas are opening up, so really, really crazy. Excited, but at the same time, slightly just a bit more anxious on what happens when things get opened up again, because it does mean people are moving about a bit more. But I think it's due time. It's time when we start considering some of these things. We'll just have to be really careful how it's done. Today we're coming in from Deuteronomy chapter 11, and I had to read this a couple of times to really quite understand which generation Moses is talking to. But if you have the adult version, you'll see that there's a little bit of a blurb down here telling us that Moses is actually talking to the second generation. It's not the first generation that perished in the wilderness, but the second generation that was able to enter into the promised land with Joshua and Caleb, right? Now, it's interesting because here that he talks about a third generation, right? If you look here, he says something about, it was not, verse 5, it was not your children who saw what he did for you in the wilderness until you arrived at this place. In the sense of talking about how the first generation were the adults, right? The adults that came out of Egypt, the adults that complained, that yelled a lot, that was like, I need food, I need water, you're going to bring us out here to die. But it was their kids who also saw how God saved them from the Red Sea, or opened the Red Sea for them and saved them from the Egyptians, how God has done great wonders for them, like the city of Jericho. It's that same group of people now about to enter the promised land, but it's talking about their kids, right? Their kids were not the ones who maybe saw firsthand what God has done, or if they did, they didn't quite understand it. Annie and I talk about this a lot. I think there's a idea where our faith is passed on from generation to generation, right? And in our case, my mom was the second generation Christian in her family. My dad was the first generation. Annie's parents, somewhat similar. Mom is a multi-generation and dad is a first generation. But it is because of that we have some foundations. It's because of that we have this culture of faith. We then talk about how Americans, or at least the Caucasian Americans, they seem to have faith figured out a little bit more, right? Maybe not perfectly, but they seem to have faith integrated into their lives a little bit more than maybe some Asian Americans, simply by way of their lineage, because some of these cultural backgrounds have been passed on. Right? And if you look maybe at the Midwest, or maybe at some of these mega churches, or some of these pastors, they've been Christians for multiple generations, and a lot of their thoughts and processes in their mind are actually very conservative. But they're not conservative simply to be conservative. They're conservative, it comes from how their families were brought up back in the days, like literally back in the days. And this idea just keeps getting passed on from generation to generation. So today, my question to all of you is, for some of you, maybe your family members aren't Christian. How do you hope that you can pass this on to your friends or to your other family? And then secondly is, if your family members are Christian, if you were born into a Christian family with parents who also have the same faith as you, how do you think you benefited from that? How do you think you benefited personally from their having lived this life of faith? Now you get to see it and you get to follow it. Okay, just some questions to think about for today. It's important because as we get into May and June, we come up against Mother's Day and Father's Day. I think it's a time to start thinking about how we can think about our parents and appreciate them some more. Okay, all right, love you guys. I will see you all tomorrow.